Alrighty, Mike Newton. I'm excited to talk to you today. To be honest, I haven't known you for very long or seen a whole lot of your stuff, but as I was looking for guests to come on the show, I think you follow Justin Cambra, who does more regular conversations inside of the podcast community. I saw you were somehow in his network, and I looked at some of your stuff. I saw that you were in the you're part of the SWAT team, and then you're also a real estate investor. It's kind of an interesting combination. So I'm really interested to pick your brain on investing in real estate, but thanks for coming on the show.
Hey man, I appreciate you for having me. And yeah, my name is Mike Newton. All of my Instagram and YouTube is under the name Millennial Mike. And yeah, I'm a police officer, full-time police officer. Actually, I just resigned from our SWAT team after almost 7 years because getting late night call outs to drive all over the state to handle crazy hostage rescue calls wasn't fitting into the schedule with the new baby, my wife, full-time police officer, YouTube channel, real estate investor with 28 rental units across 4 different states. I finally had to pick something to give up, and unfortunately my wife wouldn't let me let her go, so I had to pick my next most beloved possession and resign from the SWAT team. I'm now just a has-been.
Jeez, that is nuts. Yeah, I'm sure that was impossible to juggle. I mean, I have one 16-month-old right now. You know, I'm a pilot, so there's that, but I can't imagine doing the whole SWAT deal at nighttime and then coming home and not getting any sleep. And that's nuts. So how did you get started investing in real estate?
So, I think I always feel like I have a story that's somewhat relatable, but then I see all these fake gurus who are charging $30,000 for their course. And I go, I guess there just must be an exorbitant amount of people out there with gobs of cash they can throw at nothing before they even get started. But for me, I was poor and broke my entire life. I grew up very poor. I'm the oldest of 6 kids from 3 different baby daddies, never even met mine. And I think I was about 12 when I made the executive decision. I just didn't want to be poor for the rest of my life. And so as I got older and I did things like, start to read some books, this was pre-YouTube, of course, and then start to watch videos on YouTube, I was like, well, how are people building their wealth? How do people become wealthy? How do you get rich? And that's where I discovered something that most people have heard, which is like, hey, 90% of millionaires built their wealth in real estate. And I was like, all right, I guess I should probably learn about real estate. And so several years of reading books, watching podcasts before they were called podcasts, and going through that process brought me to buying my first rental property in 2018. Which is a house hack just outside of Seattle, a very high cost of living area. And I started with a house hack. And then from there, I started investing at a distance in the Midwest. So I still live in Seattle. I invest in Indiana primarily. I have 24 units there. I have 1 in Chicago, Illinois, 1 in Florida, and then the duplex here in Washington. And years of doing things in Indiana now, I'm one of the most well-known investors for Gary, Indiana, which most people, if you Google Gary, you're going to say, who would ever invest in this crazy city that's just as bad as Flint or Detroit, Michigan? But there I am. And now I am known online as the king of Gary, Indiana real estate. It's quite a title for an interesting town. That's a little bit about my journey.
So I started in real estate. I'm not too much in it anymore. In like 2020, I did some wholesale deals. And the first 5 deals I did were in Anderson, Indiana. Have you done anything? How far is that from Gary?
I have not done Anderson. I've heard it before. I'm not familiar with it. Is that on the southern side of the state?
Yeah, I think so.
So, it's probably a 3-4 hour drive, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, as far as like a place that the average person would want to live or, I don't know if it checks those boxes, but as far as cap rates go and cash flow wise, I could see the appeal, right? You could buy something for like 50 grand and rent it out for $1,000. Is that kind of your model?
I got a whole bunch of those. However, I always caution people, look, I know that I make it sound incredibly easy and very, very fun and super simple. And that's mostly just because I'm way more intelligent than you could ever hope to be. That's a joke. Way more hard-headed and willing to just bash my head against the brick wall that was investing in a place like Gary and not give up. I have a lot of houses that I purchased for 30 grand, 40 grand, 50 grand. And yeah, they rent for $1,000 to $1,200. I have mortgages as cheap as $350 a month. That's cheaper than most people's car payment. And when you say I've got a rental property that rents for $1,200 and a mortgage for $350, obviously we all know you set aside some additional money for principal, interest, insurance, vacancy, capex, maintenance, property manager. So the spread isn't quite, $800, $900, but it's $500, $600. We go, oh, I'd love to do that. Let me go buy some properties in Gary. And then I say, careful, because you can go broke buying cheap. It's very easy to buy bad deals. So if you wanted to know how exactly I assess my deals and what I'm looking for and what I'm getting into, that's a longer conversation, which I'm happy to have, but it's not quite as easy as just go pick up $50,000 properties in Gary and call it good.
Well, I am kind of curious actually that that topic because if you live in Seattle, your options are kind of limited to go and buy even a house hack. Like a lot of people can't even get into a house, period.
Right.
Whereas it's possible maybe to buy a $30,000 house,
Mhm.
but I just am very averse to not being in the location because especially with a house like that, you might be dealing with somebody that is a little less reliable. They're more tend to stealing or breaking things. Just in general, your risk is higher with that sort of property. So what is your system? Like, how have you been successful with this?
Yeah, so I don't know how politically correct I have to be on your podcast. Hopefully, I'm
Not at all.
not too offensive. Okay, so low quality housing comes with low quality problems and low quality tenants. No matter
Yeah.
what market you're getting into, there's going to be problems. The good news is, in every market across this country, there's people who are investing successfully and people who are not investing successfully. Find the ones who are doing it right and try to copy their strategies. Now, if you're, like you mentioned earlier, if you're in an area like I'm at in Seattle, well, you're facing a $900,000 median home price for the city of Seattle. You're facing an anti-landlord, anti-business, pro-tenant, very, very democratic legislature that wants rent control, that wants eviction moratoriums. There's problems with these markets. Then you go to Indiana and it's 3 weeks to get somebody out. It's practically hotel laws. If you don't pay, you don't stay. Properties are cheaper, property taxes are cheaper. There's a lot of good things, but there's Indiana problems. And those problems are the quality of tenants. Well, look, if you're in an area which has been historically destroyed because of deindustrialization for our country, and what happened in the 1970s when we passed the North American Free Trade Agreement and we shipped our steel jobs to Mexico and China, we shipped our manufacturing jobs. Every political campaign that you see talks about manufacturing, talks about the Rust Belt, talks about jobs. This is one of those areas that's famous for being destroyed by poor policy. And so what happened with all of the educated people moving out, leaving all of the working class who no longer had jobs, is you got systemic poverty. If you Google Gary, you'll see it has 3 times the national poverty rate, 3 times the national crime rate. 1/3 of all buildings are abandoned. Watch a couple of my videos. I do videos on abandoned property walkthroughs all the time. Got videos about the city of Gary, history of Gary. You're going to look at some of these pictures and you're going to say that looks more like war-torn Syria than it does an actual city in the United States. So you have to have systems and processes in place to be successful in a market that's as difficult as Gary to understand. For me, I totally get what you're coming from. Like, look, it's easier if you live by your properties. Hands down, it's way easier if you can drive to a property, if you can meet with a tenant, if you can go out there and say, oh, I see there's moss on the roof. My property manager isn't driving by and calling me to say there's moss on the roof. I drove by. I know I should get this taken care of before it becomes a bigger problem. Many benefits to investing locally. But as you mentioned, a lot of people can't. A 20% down payment on the $900,000 duplex outside of Seattle is $180,000 plus closing costs. For a working man to save $180,000 plus closing costs at the regular going wage for the area, you're looking at 6-7 years of trying to save just 10%. It's not going to happen. It's almost impossible. And so my advice to people is, look, if that's you, if like me, you're a blue collar worker and you don't have that much money, and you're trying to figure out how I can make my money go further, well, I decided to invest in an area where the numbers made more sense. But with that came the challenges. So how do I avoid getting destroyed by bad tenants or property managers or contractors who are trying to steal from you? It's been a long road of trial and error, trial by fire. I've lost money. I've made money. I've built relationships. I've had to fire people. Really, it starts with you, the individual. And I know I've been rambling here for a while. I'm sorry, man.
No, no, no. Keep going. This is all good.
It
You're getting to the
starts
good part right now.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. It starts with you, the individual, recognizing that ultimately you have to be accountable for everything that happens. Any mistake, any win is 100% square on your shoulders. You can't make excuses. You can't blame other people. You have to view yourself as the leader of your organization or your business. You're the CEO. You want to own a rental company? You want to own rental properties? You're the boss. And your property manager needs to look at you like the boss, the contractors, the handyman, the real estate agents, the wholesalers, even the tenants. And a lot of people, I think today, suffer from this cult of be nice. And there's nothing wrong with being nice and getting along and being kind. I totally support that, but not at your own detriment. Not when it comes to people taking advantage of you and advantage of your wallet and not paying or stealing your money or not doing what they said, not getting it done on time. You have to be willing to hold people accountable, starting with you. That was one of the best things that I learned from being a police officer. I was very much, before as a police officer, I was very much a peacemaker, which I still am. I don't like to get into confrontational situations or things like that. But when you become a police officer and you have to arrest somebody who's just beaten his wife up, there is no, well, maybe we can work it out. Sorry, bro, you're going to jail. Going to jail, and we're going to have this conversation as professionally as possible. And if you refuse to have it professionally, well, then there's next steps after that. And I would say the exact same thing when it comes to handling property managers, handling tenants, handling agents. You have the conversation, you set expectations. If things aren't being met, you need to address it very quickly, as professionally as possible. And then if it isn't getting resolved, you handle it at the next step, which might just mean firing somebody. It might just mean refusing to do more business with them, or it might even mean litigation, God forbid. And recognizing that early on will help you from getting taken advantage of and will just help set you up to be successful more down the road.
Yeah. Can you give an example of a time you had to do that? I'm sure
Sure.
you've got a few just off
Yeah,
the
I
top
mean,
of your head.
I've tried man, I've dated so many property managers, it's terrible. It's absolutely horrible. And you're sitting there and you're like, is this a toxic abusive relationship? What's happening here? I've had, and look, you're a handsome guy. I'm sure you've never experienced this either. I've never been ghosted or had someone not text me back. I was like, is this what it's like to be under 6 foot tall and try to date just with property managers? Respond to my texts, bro. This is crazy. So, anyways, you message them, they don't email you, they don't call you, they don't text you, and you're like, well, that can't be good. Something's gone wrong, or they're too overworked. I've been with so many property managers. I've tried, I think, literally 6 at this point. And there's good
Jeez.
things that I've seen, there's bad things that I've seen, and there's horrible things I've seen. What my ultimate opinion is that I think that your property manager is stealing from you. I could prove it mathematically. And that no one has your nobody cares more about your money than you. All right. The only person who's going to care the most and have your best interest at heart is you. That comes to tenant placement, that comes to repairs that they might make, a bunch of different things. So I would say you got to keep these property managers on a tight leash. And I've noticed a phenomenon. Here's another thing that when you manage at a distance, it's a lot harder to self-manage. That's why you have to deal with property managers. If you are living close to your rentals, I advocate for self-management. I think you can do it. I think a lot of people are scared to do it. Good buddy of mine, the lumberjack landlord, self-manages a 160 plus unit portfolio in New Hampshire, all while being like a high-powered global sales executive for some medical company that he sold for like $1 billion or something. Like, it can be done even if you're busy. It's tough, can be done. At a distance, it's very hard because, as I mentioned earlier, you just can't drive out to the properties that easily. So you're going to be more likely to be pushed towards property management. Now, my goal this year is to try to start self-managing more rentals out there. But when you're pushed to property management, to your earlier question of, what's the example of who I had to fire, you're going to notice there's a bunch of different problems. And one of the ones that I've discovered more recently is what I call the property manager contractor. They're a contractor construction company masquerading as a property management company. When they look at how much money they make with renting out a unit for, call it $1,500 a month, they might make the first month's rent and then 10%. What I was saying is you really need to be aware of property manager contractors. And these are what I call the construction companies or contractors masquerading as property managers. They realize they make a lot more money having you fix things and update things. And all of a sudden now, hey, we've got an $8,000 kitchen remodel. We've got a $1,500 beautify the outside of the property. All of this, of course, under the guise that if you don't make these repairs, we won't get top dollar rent. It's going to be harder to rent the property out. So if you make these repairs, the property is going to be more efficient, and which is a reasonable argument to make. So you say, okay, that makes sense. But what you have forgotten to recognize is that this property management company is running a side construction company, or it's just their handyman on the side, and they need to pay these people. And so they've come to you with this brilliant idea of how you can fund their side business or fund their repair guys with repairs that, are they really necessary? And as I mentioned earlier, look, somebody like me, I got 24 units in Gary. I know what the standard quality of a Gary rental is. And over improving or over repairing these things isn't going to get us more rent. It's just going to cost us money. And so recognize in our personal experience on this 5-plex, that was a partner deal because we're doing it by committee. The partners wanted to take the property manager's advice. All right, sounds good. We can pay for the repairs. So they did the repairs, and they wasted from May to September, didn't rent a single unit, even though we spent all the money to upgrade the units in the way they wanted. Not only did they not rent any, they didn't have a single showing because we weren't a priority for them. Nobody cares about your money as much as you do. And eventually, at my request, we fired them and we moved on to somebody else. And we're having better success and better luck with that now. We're exploring a couple different strategies. But my advice to you is pay very close attention to the people you give your money to, and don't take what they say as gospel. No one cares as much about your money as you. Even though they may be an expert when compared to you, that doesn't mean that there aren't mixed motives or biases or other things affecting the advice that they're giving. The number one person that I recommend you have on your out-of-state investing team is not a good manager, not a good handyman, not good agents. It's going to be your network of other investors in the area that you can go to for advice. So again, I mentioned earlier, like I'm kind of referred to as the king of Gary. I make a lot of YouTube videos about investing in Gary, and I get hundreds of Instagram DMs or YouTube comments with people saying, what should I do? What's this worth? What's the value? Where's the good markets? How should I improve it? Is it 2 beds or 3 beds or 4 bed? That's the best rental unit. When they come to me and they ask this stuff, I don't have a course that I've sold them on. I'm not making any money on it. When I give them advice, it's just my advice from my experience. There's no mixed motives, and I'm not trying to make a buck off them. So they get better advice from me than they typically do from their agent or from anyone else who's got a dollar bill attached to it.
Yeah. Well, so you're part of that team in a sense. They're
Right.
their investor network. So that's
Yep.
playing to that. Okay. So on that note, what would be the other players? Because I mean, other investors are good, but you're going to need to use an agent, and you're a property manager, I heard, is another one. Is there somebody else on the ground that is like a handyman, or like, do you have a group of people that's kind of like your squad?
Yeah. So the order of importance, in my opinion, the order of importance, the order of operations, the PEMDAS of your out-of-state investing team, other investors in the area that you can network with. These people, like for Gary, it would be people like me, a person like my friend Lynn, who invests out there, another guy who's popular in Gary, his name's Jordan. We're all people get, 10 to 30 units in the area. We're doing the work on the ground. We're small-time landlords as opposed to some big corporation who owns like 100 or something. You can actually reach out to us. We're real people. We got small channels, small Instagram pages. We'll have a conversation with you. We'll give advice. You chat with us, you're getting reality. That's who you want at the very top. After that, the next most important person, if you are going to use property management, it is going to be your property management team. They're the interface between you and the tenants, a lot of times between you and your handyman or their handyman. So you need to find a good property manager. Not easy to do. But everything further down the list, your property manager, real estate agents, wholesalers, handymen, contractors, title company, everything further down the list will all refer back to the top of the list, because you can find good of all of those other categories by asking the network. I can tell you that Indiana Title Network is the only title company I've used. I've used 4 out there. They all suck. Indiana Title Network is great. I can tell you that Kurt and Vicky Sheffelski, CVS Rental Properties Management Company, is the best. That doesn't mean that they're amazing. That just means that they're the best at what they do. And though they have their own problems and issues, they are better than all of the other ones I won't name here because I'm not trying to get them to message me angrily. I could tell you who the good agents are. And, my theory with real estate agents is they're like girlfriends. You need as many as possible at all times. Just make sure they know about each other. All right. Because if they don't, it's going to be a real awkward when they start to discover it never works out well. I'm just kidding. I have one wife, love her very much. Just kidding. But the reality is that if you hang your hat on the productivity of one person, you're setting yourself up for failure. You need to be talking to as many agents as possible. So I don't sign buyer exclusive agreements. I operate under the rule that you dance with the one who brung you. I referred to my friend Matt, the lumberjack landlord, earlier. If an agent brings you a deal, that's the agent you use. But I'm not going to just be like out hunting for deals religiously myself and then find one and be like, hey, call my agent. Hey, by the way, I found this. Why don't you come get in? No, that's not how it works. You bring me a deal, I dance with you.
Yeah, that makes sense. So is that your primary means of, or I guess you said both ways. So how are you finding deals? Are you going on market, off market? What's your process for that?
You should be exploring every single avenue that you possibly can. So I highly recommend that you get to know the wholesalers in your area. For Gary, and let me take an aside real quick. You would be very surprised how few people actually have a YouTube page, an Instagram page, or a Facebook group about their specific market. If you go onto YouTube right now, in fact, I challenge your audience, go onto YouTube and type in real estate investing. You're never going to see a video from me or Brennan, because you're going to see 1,000 Bigger Pockets videos. You're going to see 1,000 Grant Cardone, Graham Stephan, all these other people. And I don't know as much about you, Brent, about where you invest, but if you type in real estate investing Gary, Indiana, or real estate investing Indiana, all of the videos are me. I own the algorithm for my area. And what you would be surprised about is that even big cities like Seattle or Portland, there's not some creator who consistently makes videos about that area. If you grab the market share and you make a little channel like mine, which only has like 13,000 subscribers, but about half of them are all doing deals in Gary. So all of the deals out there, the wholesalers, the other investors, the real estate agents, they always know me. Hey, you're that guy from YouTube, right? Yes, I am. So I get deals that show up in my inbox on Instagram that nobody else looked at. I'll tell you a quick burr strategy. My first burr strategy I did. A guy that had been messaging me back and forth on Instagram asking for advice about Gary for about 6 months. No profile picture, no posts, private accounts, could be a bot. I have no idea, right? Message, and I just, sure, we chat, talk about real estate. One day he says, hey man, somebody forwarded me this deal. Are you interested? He sends me a 2-bed single family house for $18,000. And I look at the thing and it needs about 20 grand worth of work. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take it for sure. So I buy the deal for 18 grand. I put 20 grand into it. I'm all in for around 55,000 with closing costs. It appraises with an after repair value of 150,000 like 3 months later. So I pick up $100,000. I got it for next to nothing. And it was a deal nobody else even got to look at except for him and wherever he randomly happened to see it from. So I outcompeted everybody. And why? Because I make terrible quality, lame videos on YouTube about investing in Gary. But the good news is I'm not competing against overproduced losers like Bigger Pockets. It's just me and no one else. So I own everything for Gary. So my advice to you, if you're in Hardin County, Kentucky, or if you're in Tacoma, Washington, or if you're in Grand Forks, North Dakota, make a YouTube channel and an Instagram page. And as I mentioned earlier, a Facebook group for Gary. And dude, I've got a 2,200 member Facebook group because I just made Gary, Indiana real estate investing Facebook. I don't promote it. I don't talk about it. I made it. People search the terms on Facebook and they've been joining for the last 2 years. I'm up to 2,200 people. Well, now deals pop up in there all the time. Wholesalers are in there all the time. I can network with all these people. It took me 5 seconds of my time and 10 minutes each week to approve all the new member requests. Super easy.
Wow. What good advice. That's something I haven't heard someone say before, but I could totally see how that works. And especially the more rural you are, Gary, Indiana, if you're saying it works in Seattle, you're definitely going to be set if you're going somewhere much smaller.
100%. Like the only places you'll see some competition are the major metropolitan areas. And so then my advice for you is, okay, don't make a Seattle, Washington investing page. Make a Snohomish County, Washington, which is just north 20 minutes. Make an Everett, Washington, pick a different city and you'll blow through the algorithm for those search terms.
Yeah. I grew up in Arlington, Washington, by the way. So like an hour
did you really? Where do you live now?
Fort Worth, Texas. Yeah. I moved here for work. I'm an airline pilot now. So
dude, that's awesome. Yeah. I used to play pickup soccer at a indoor soccer at a dome up in Arlington. And I was up there a lot, actually. It's a nice area.
Yeah, it's a good place to grow up. So how are you buying these deals? Are you raising money? They're cheap enough? Are you just refining and buying cash? Or how do you go about funding these?
Yeah, it's a great question, man. So I've done a little bit of everything. And again, I have a luxury. A lot of people don't. Things are very cheap out there. So I have put 20% down on a $60,000 house. So that's 12 grand plus closing costs. I've done just traditional financing, 20% down. I've done pay all cash and fund the rehab out of a home equity line of credit on my primary residence, which is the duplex that I house hacked initially in Seattle, and then convert it into the burst strategy, cash out the money, and then pay off the HELOC and own it with a 30-year fixed rate debt. So I've done that. I've done owner occupied 5% down financing for my first HELOC. I've done a lot of seller financing. I've negotiated terms as good as, like $3,000 down, 0% interest, pay it off over the next 4 years. Done balloon debt, private money lending. Private money is a great strategy. Private money and seller financing are like the holy grails of real estate investing because you can structure it however you want. So I did a private money lending deal where I bought a house for 60 grand. I used my own money and I needed to fund the remodel, which was about another 60 grand. So I took private money on it. We created a note against the house. It's like a lien on the house. They now own a note, says I got to pay them 10% interest a year. So the 60 grand they sent me, I got to pay them 6,000 a year. It comes out to like $500 a month. I pay them $500 a month to borrow that money to remodel the house. And then I put a term on it. I said, okay, my term's going to be 5 years. 5 years, I got to pay you back, cash out, refinance, but no prepayment penalty. So that way, if interest rates drop or I want to cash out early, I can cash out early. I don't get punished. And I put an extension clause in there so that if the market happens to crash at the end of those 5 years, I'm not locked into the worst time. I can wait it out an extra few years if I need to. But you can structure a deal however you want. That's the beauty of seller financing and of private money. Hard money, there's a lot more rules. Traditional financing, there's a lot more hard and fast rules that you cannot change. But seller financing and private money come from networking, which leads back to number one on your list. You need to get a network of other people in the area. And then the other advice I gave earlier, which is build an Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube presence for your area.
Yeah. And then a combination of all those things, one thing leads to another. Somebody has a deal, you partner with somebody, and then you can start. So how many units do you have right now, you said?
28 across 4 different states.
Okay. So you got Gary. What are the other states?
Duplex in Washington, single family house in Chicago, single family house in Florida, and then 24 units in Gary.
So do you have a team for each of those states, or is it scaled down for the ones that aren't as many?
So the Florida was, my wife's from Florida, so we rented out her house when she moved. And so because she's got family and we visit there all the time, we can just manage that ourselves. It's one property. And Florida is very pro-business, fair to landlords, so we're not super concerned. The one here in Washington, I live in one half of my duplex. I rent the other side out. I've self-managed that one since I bought it. Why would I pay somebody? I'm literally here. I'm right here. Yeah. So I don't pay anybody. I just manage it. And then the Chicago property that I bought, I actually self-managed that one as well, but I have the assistance of a good friend of mine, somebody who found me on YouTube, who owns 70 plus Section 8 rentals, and we just became such close friends. He was like, Mike, you got to buy one out here. It's so good. And I did buy it. And it is good. It is a good deal. It pays me a bunch every month. The only reason I haven't grown more in Chicago, which for those of you who are geographically not great, Chicago and Gary are only 45 minutes away from each other. It's very close. The only reason I haven't bought more in Chicago is because of things like eviction moratoriums. I am afraid that when you build a big enough portfolio, the problems you'll have from it, you're dealing with 6-month timeframes to kick people out, squatters' rights, somebody breaks in, and you're just stuck dealing with that for, it's not that the money that the properties don't pencil out on paper as good investments. It's that I don't want to deal with the other crap, especially when I already have a successful foothold in Gary and I've got a good system there.
Yeah, totally. So what's the cash flow look like on all of those? Are you what's your margins? And is it would you say it's realistic to live off of that? Or if someone's aspiring to retire from owning rental properties, what kind of insight can you give on what they would need to do?
Yeah, this is a great question. This is something that I've noticed the narrative around shifting substantially.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a YouTube junkie. I don't know how old you are. I've been on YouTube since it came out in 2006 when I was 15 years old. And I've watched people like Grant Cardone, Bigger Pockets, Graham Stephan, a lot of these other, Ken McElroy, a lot of these real estate gurus shift their narrative, especially Bigger Pockets over time, where they went from buying cash flow to now, well, cash flow doesn't really exist. You're looking at equity appreciation and there's other ways you can make money. And that's true. But what you have to remember that a lot of these people, Bigger Pockets is a real estate education company. They don't make money if they don't sell courses and boot camps and masterminds and seminars and meetups. So they have to keep you on the hook coming back for more. So if they teach you how to search for cash flow, but the market shifts and none of these properties in all of these markets cash flow, you're going to go, oh, I guess I can't do deals. And then you're going to unsubscribe. You're not going to watch their stuff and they're going to lose customers. So that's when they start to present to you other alternatives. Somebody like me, and hopefully Brennan, I assume he is, who is more honest, I'm going to tell you that, first of all, cash flow never existed. It never existed. It doesn't exist day one. It doesn't exist for the first 5 years. Total myth. There was a very, very, very small window of time post great financial crisis, 2009 to 2013, where if you got lucky and bought at the historical bottom of the market, you could potentially buy something that actually cash flowed day one. And even then, they usually didn't cash flow day one. But people rode the single greatest wave of appreciation, both in property values and in rents of all time ever between 2012 and 2022. And so then they sit here and tell you, it's just buy a cash flow rental property. It's no big deal. Sorry that in 2008, when I was still a junior in high school, I wasn't out buying real estate. It was really dumb of me. And so it's not that you can't get the cash flow, but I want you to have a realistic expectation of what cash flow is, how you get there. So number one, we got to talk about the life cycle of real estate. There's 4 phases. I stabilize, optimize, long-term control. So everybody's very interested in the buy, which is important because you can't get to any of the other ones unless you buy some properties. So you buy properties and you do your formula and you try to find something that's cash flowing, but you go, hey, nothing cash flows. That's what leads you to a market like Gary, where you're like, hey, it cash flows on paper, but is it going to actually cash flow in real life? You buy your first rental and principal, interest, taxes, insurance, capex, vacancy, maintenance, property management, you're left with a couple $100, maybe 400 or 500 if you're lucky, as your monthly cash flow. And then you run into a bunch of repairs. And yes, you're setting aside money for repairs, but you haven't owned the property long enough for that repair money to really stack up to pay for some of those repairs. So you bought the property and you very quickly realize that your next goal is to stabilize. That's step 2, stabilize. You need to get the HVAC updated, the roof taken care of. You need to figure out how to get good tenants into properties, which might mean you're working on relationships with property managers, Section 8 leasing agents, a bunch of different things. The stabilization process can go on for a long time for both your portfolio or for an individual rental. Okay, cool. Now it's stabilized. Got good tenants. We're consistently getting in the rent. Most of the big repair items have been handled. I'm not looking at major maintenance unless there's a freak of nature. For the next several years, the property can actually operate and make me some money. That starts to happen around year 4 or year 5 of owning a rental property. There's usually also been a couple of rental increases in that time. There's probably been some property appreciation in that time. So your deals start to look better year 4, year 5. That's when things are starting to get good. Next, you look at optimization. Okay, should we put in coin-operated washer and dryers in these multi-unit buildings because people would prefer to have on-site laundry as opposed to have to go down to a laundromat? And if we have on-site laundry, I'm going to keep my tenants longer. So maybe I should look at something like that. If you own look, I got 28 rental units, which means that on average, I got 2 toilets per building. That's 56 different toilets. If you, like me, and multi-unit buildings are paying the water for your tenants, then what you need to recognize is that an average toilet is like a 2.5 gallon flush. And 2.5 gallons flushed 5 times a day times 2 toilets equals thousands of gallons of water that you're paying for. And if you go with the Gerber Viper 2, which has a 1.3 gallon flush, you've now cut your water bill in half every time you flush your toilet. Now, I know you didn't invite me on your podcast to flex on people about my toilet knowledge, but the reality is when it comes to optimizing, you can geek out as much as you want over this stuff. And by the way, to cite my source, all of that info was taught to me by one of my mentors, Matt, the lumberjack landlord. Literally, we had an hour-long conversation on toilets. Great conversation if you want to save money on your water bill.
I would have never thought of that.
Dude, energy-efficient appliances. When you own 50 refrigerators, 50 stoves, 56 toilets, like, bro, you want to get stuff that doesn't have a huge electrical bill that if you're paying for these things. Yeah. And even if you're not paying for it, if you give a tenant a higher bill, are they going to want to move and find a lower bill somewhere else? This is how you optimize. Optimizing can go on forever. You can always continually update and optimize properties. Next time you replace the electrical, well, did you rip the sheetrock off? Did you re-insulate the building? Did you use R13 insulation, R19 insulation? Are you putting in new insulation in the attic? All of that keeps the heat in and the cold in, which keeps everyone's electrical bills down, which keeps you and them happy. Optimization goes on for a very long time. So buy, stabilize, optimize long-term management. Once you've got the property paying you, and now you've optimized, you got the best tenants with the cheapest utilities, and everything is working really well. This all took time. The hidden variable in the equation of cash flow that nobody talks about because it isn't sexy is time. Most people, like Bigger Pockets or a lot of these gurus, will tell you rentals equals cash flow. That's not the right equation. Rentals plus time equals cash flow. You won't see substantial cash flow from probably any property you buy, market dependent, until around year 5. The other thing that people realize is if you are still actively growing a portfolio, expanding it, you're still not going to see cash flow. Every dollar you make goes right back into buying the next property, stabilizing and optimizing the next property. You make your money if you stop doing everything and let it stack up. That's how you finally start to make money. What I hated and why I started my YouTube channel in 2017 was I watched people like Grant Cardone, and I watched these guys tell me how they became successful in real estate after they became successful. They didn't document the journey. Are they giving me a sugar-coated version of what they did, hiding the losses, flexing the wins, so they can sell me on a $17,000 investment course and another book and another seminar? What was it really like for somebody to go from nothing to a successful portfolio? My first video is me saying, I'm going to go from having no rentals, being a broke, divorced, single dad with full custody of my son and no money as a renter, to being a successful real estate agent, or investor, not an agent. And over the last 8 years, I've made videos documenting the entire journey. I still, with 28 rental units and an average unit rents for about 1,000 to 1,200 bucks. I still have a full-time job as a police officer. Your question that prompted all this was, what's the cash flow look like? What are you going to do to retire with passive income or retire with real estate, retire with rentals?
Sure.
It's a 10-year journey. Another mentor of mine, his name's Dion, YouTube channel, Dion Talk Financial Freedom. Good friend of mine, former cop, just like me. If you're getting started in real estate investing today, much like if you go to college, you're not going to become financially independent in the year 2026. You are part of the graduating class of 2036. You got to earn your degree, you got to earn your stripes. If you're starting today, you're part of the graduating class of 2036. I started in 2018, you started in 2020. I'm going to be the graduating class of 2028, you're going to be the graduating class of 2030. That's our 10-year journey to financial freedom with real estate. You need the time for appreciation in rents and property values, the time to stabilize and optimize, the time to build the network, the time to build the online presence. All of this stuff takes time. And so if you fall prey to the scams that are out there saying, dude, you can make money and retire in a year or two, and you're not going to make it happen unless you get $10 million on the sideline, you're just looking to park it somewhere, right? Regular people like us, it takes time. That's okay.
Yeah. But it sounds like when you're saying it, 10 years, it feels like you're saying it as a long time, but compared to what most people subscribe to, which is work for 40 years and then retire when they're 60 and have the last years of their life where they're the least able to do anything to, do what they want to do. That's a much better deal. 10 years, you can just kind of go through the school of hard knocks a little bit, learn the lessons and build the portfolio. And then you shave off all that time. So I think it's still a good deal if, even if you have to wait 10 years as opposed to 2 years. You know what I mean?
No, I completely agree. And I think that's absolutely the right mindset. Look, I'll be retired at 38 years old. I'm 35 right now. I'll be retired at 38, but let's say, God forbid, I'm wrong. It doesn't take me 10, it takes me 12. Okay, cool. I retire at 40. I'm 25 years ahead of all my contemporaries who are looking at 65 before they can finally hit retirement. And then they're going to rely on Social Security, if it's even there for them. I honestly don't think Social Security will be around for people our age. I really don't. So I'm going to beat these people by 20 to 25 years. No problem. Yes, it was a 10-year struggle and I sacrificed and I worked gobs of overtime as a cop and late nights, early mornings, saved the money, put in the work, worked in the trenches, but it'll be worth it. I saw some recent graph that came out. It was like the younger you retire, the later that you live. And like, if you're like retiring at 40, on average, you'll live to 85. You retire at 50, on average, you live to 70. You retire at 65, on average, you live to like 68. I'm like, dang, that's pretty crazy data. I'll have to go find that graph and send it to you, throw it on your video.
That's scary if that's true.
Dude, it was like, you should make retiring from your full-time job a massive priority, because the younger you retire, the longer you're going to live. Now, that doesn't mean, obviously not everyone in the country can just retire. But look, even when I retire from being a cop, it just means that I'm not doing 50 to 60 hours a week in a very high-stress job. I'm going to be doing 10 to 15 hours a week, managing my rental properties, handling phone calls and stuff. But on my time, when I want, from where I want, it's just a much better quality of life. But you got to earn it. I like the idea of earning it. That's what I'm doing, putting in the time. I know you're doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the word retirement doesn't necessarily mean not working. It just means more working for yourself, like you're saying, on your own terms. Because, I don't think there's anybody that truly wants to just sit on the beach and drink martinis for the rest of their life. I mean, there's a quote that Jordan Peterson has where it's like, let's play that out. After, an hour, you start to get sunburned. You've been drinking a martini. Now you're dehydrated and you have a headache, and, the whole thing doesn't look so good anymore as if you fast forward that like a couple hours. So you still need to have something to be productive and a purpose and things that keep you going.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. For me, my purpose is going to be my family, children. Birth rates in our country are in the toilet. We need more children. If you're not married with kids yet, dude, that better be on your freaking bucket list. You need them. We need two, minimum of two, at least have three, have some sons. Sons in a man's youth are like arrows in the quiver of a warrior. That's right out of Proverbs. All right. I'm telling you, it's you're exhausted and tired, and it's not fun. And it's not easy all the time, but I promise you they're worth every late night. When you walk in the door, my son just learned how to crawl, my youngest one. You walk in the door and he looks up at you and he just speed crawls at you as fast. It's absolutely worth it. You need to have kids, and the purpose that we should all have is to benefit the culture around us. If you don't take becoming wealthy as a call to action, you should, because when you have money, you can affect your goals on your society, on your family. You can give. you can donate, you can spend time, you can take trips, all of this to give back. And people like us, I'm telling you, we need more of that. Our society is so broken apart and fractured with technology, and we got to figure out a way to build community again.
100%. Yeah. And more so the people that are listening to this, because those are the type of people that we probably need reproducing rather than the people that are just going to raise terrible kids.
Right. Yes, please. I mean, look, I grew up unbelievably poor, but all the stats show that the more wealthy and more educated you become, the less likely you're going to have children. That doesn't make sense. We want people who are educated, we want people who are intelligent, and we want people who have the financial means to provide for their children and have kids. But for whatever reason, you look at the graphs, poor people have a crap load of kids, wealthy and educated people like, that's what the help's for, I guess. I got, it's terrible. It's terrible.
Focusing on their careers and trying to justify it in other means. So on the note of financial freedom, what are some baseline assumptions or rules that you have to know when it's okay to leave your W-2? Like, do you have some things you have in place? Like, okay, I'm going to have this big of an emergency fund. I need to have this much cash flow compared to what I did have before. Like, what's your thought process of like, okay, this is how I know I'm going to be okay?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when you get down to the hard numbers, I think a lot of people, at least certainly me, when I was first coming up with my goal for what kind of money I want to make each month from rental properties that would allow me to retire, I thought $10,000 a month. If I can make $10,000 a month, 120 grand a year, I could definitely retire off of that. Well, as you grow a portfolio, you grow expenses that can eat up money. And so, you need to have $10,000 in profit means, well, how much money is actually coming in, from rent? You need to be bringing in $35,000 a month to end up with a third of that as profit, 10,000. Then from that 10,000, okay, well, when you don't have a job anymore, what's your health insurance cost? What's your health insurance cost on a family? That's a very, very expensive line item. What does it cost to fly that family if you want to try? It's more than me, old school. I can go to an airport with nothing but a backpack, sleep on a bench, no problem. When you got kids, you got a wife, they got to be taken care of. And not everybody can tough it out as much as dad. Now, my 9-year-old son, he and I can go walk around and show up and do no problem. We'll tough it out. But the baby, so one of the things I discovered was you just don't know what you don't know. I love that quote. You don't know what you don't know. And as you move through the process, you begin to learn more. And so there are things that you need to take into consideration. $10,000 a month, I hate to say it, especially to somebody out there who's looking to get started, because I remember me when I was 18, 19, 20, to conceive of $10,000 a month was like, to make 120 grand a year, it's impossible. And to now be told that's not enough, you need 20 grand a month, you need more than that. Like, I don't want to demoralize people. So if you're out there listening, please don't lose your motivation. For me, I'm looking at probably closer to $20,000 a month in profit before I would pull the plug. And that's because health insurance is very expensive. I got to take care of my family. I don't want us to retire and take a step back in quality of life. I also don't want to retire and lose my ability to continue to grow a portfolio. If I was to retire right now, I could, and I would be part of what's called the lean fire movement. Like, you're financially independent, retired early, but you're just barely making ends meet. And one hiccup, one little cold in your financial system, and it can come crashing down. And I've watched some people that I've known who have retired with real estate, and I've watched how they went too early and they changed as a person. They became bitter and upset because they had money problems. I don't want that to be me. I want to be fat fire. I want to have an abundance. If that means I work a few extra years to guarantee that I've got a big fat safety net in terms of the cash on hand and bank accounts, if I'm bringing in more money than I needed, yes, if it takes me an extra year or two, and then it turns out maybe I didn't need it. Oh, did you waste that time? Maybe. But look, dude, there's the what is it? The swan effects. Sleep well at night. So SWAN. Sleep well at night. Swan account. Swan preparation. If it took me a little bit of extra time, but I've set my family up for success, the business up for success, I could sleep well at night. I didn't ever used to stress about a lot of this stuff. It wasn't until I had all of these other people depending on me, which is amazing and gives me great purpose, and I love it, but I take it very seriously. What I would recommend for people is, obviously people are in different stages of life. If you don't have a bunch of kids, you don't have a spouse, and it's just you, and you try to retire and it doesn't work out, and you can go right back to work, it's not a huge deal, right? I mean, it sucks, but it's not like a huge deal. To do that to your family, you move, hey, we're doing this. Dad's home all the time. Oh, I got to go back to it. That's tough on people. Children especially, they need systems, they need structure. And so I don't want to put the family through that if I can avoid it. So for
Yeah.
me, I'm looking at 20 grand a month in straight profit from the rentals. And then a big fat bank account of at least 100 grand liquid cash plus access to credit. Here's another thing you got to think about. You quit your W-2 job, it becomes harder to get lending. A lot of loans require that W-2 income. That doesn't totally disqualify you, and you can still claim some of your own income, but then you're stuck in this zone of, look, I want to write off as much of my income as possible with expenses on the rentals. So now I don't have an income. Well, how do you get more loans? And I know there's DSCR, there's a bunch of other strategies, but just a lot of things to think about when it comes to retiring. I do encourage you to get there because of the whole 40, live to 80, 50, live to 70, 60, die at 60. I encourage you to get there, but just understand, be smart about it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a bunch of rules that you can go by as far as like financial independence numbers. Some people will say like the Trinity study, live off of 4% of whatever you have, and then you won't lose a principal amount. The other one is like if you have 25 times the amount that you want to live on for a year.
Sure.
That's another kind of, I think that's more referring to what you have in the market though, rather than rentals. Cause
those are
rentals,
like Roth IRA numbers right there.
yeah.
That's your 401k, that's your pension, all that type of stuff.
Which is another reason why real estate is kind of interesting, because those are income producing assets rather than just like appreciating and living off of interest. There's a kind of a faster route almost than just investing 15% of your income for 40 years. Like you can find a deal and force some value into that deal, and then that'll pay you money. So I think it's a faster route to financial freedom, in my opinion.
Oh, no, I agree. And I would say, and look, and I don't want to sound like an elitist snob. I know I made some jokes about being better than everybody. They were jokes, but the reality is real estate is harder than just putting money in a 401k or a Roth IRA. It is. It is more difficult. Not everybody can do what we do. They can't. Either they don't have the disposition, they don't have the intelligence, they don't have the stress tolerance. There's a million reasons out there. If I was giving advice to the lowest common denominator, this is what Dave Ramsey is great for. He talks to the lowest common denominator. Don't go into debt. Invest in a Roth IRA. 40 years from now, you're going to be good. That's good advice. That is technically applicable to everybody. If you follow that, you will be successful. But if you have the aptitude and the disposition and the drive and the hustle and the intelligence to pursue greater things, then yes, you recognize you can use debt to structure it intelligently, and not all debt is created equal. And you could potentially buy a business or buy rental properties, and you can move things into a more complex realm of operation. But with that comes the ability to have a different financial outlook, early retirement, all these different things.
Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. That's a kind of a through line between all these conversations I have, is that it's, nothing is just like, oh, I found this magic scenario where I did this thing or bought this thing and it just prints money forever and I never have to worry about it. It's like, because I always like to hear these different things. It's like, oh, maybe that's a good thing to do. But every time I get into this conversation, I'm like, man, that person pretty much became an expert in that thing and has spent so much time becoming what they are. And
Yes.
to get to that spot where it's like, it's anything you do is going to take that amount of upfront legwork and studying and
Sure.
discipline. But, like you've seen now, it pays off in the end. So I think I think you're a good example for people of like, you can just start from nothing, and with enough hard work and discipline and fortitude, you can make it.
I
So,
completely agree. Thank you.
yeah, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think this is a really good one. You're a great interview. It's got some good jokes you threw in there. It's fun to listen to you. Where can people find you? Like YouTube channel, Instagram, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, if you just go on YouTube or Instagram and type in Millennial Mike, you should pop up on all my different pages. Feel free to send me a message on Instagram. I'm not quite large enough where I can't respond to everybody. I typically get back to you. It might take a little while, but I will get back to you.
Sounds good, man. Well, appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you.